Boa noite a todos. Apenas aguardar aqui um minuto, que os participantes estão entrando agora. E em alguns segundos aí começamos. Pronto, pessoal. Vamos começar, que já está com 6:05. Acho que já temos bastante participantes aí logados. Vamos aproveitar para começar. Primeiramente, gostaria de dar uma boa noite a todos, né? Agradecer a participação de vocês, né? Mais um webinar que o Urbano Vitalino Advogados está promovendo. Hoje a gente está aqui para discutir sobre inteligência artificial e o uso da inteligência artificial no meio jurídico. Temos como convidados, e aí faço uma breve apresentação do currículo deles, primeiramente de Alexandre Zavaglia, né, que quem é do meio de inteligência artificial e meio jurídico aqui no Brasil, com certeza já o conhece. Alexandre é coordenador do curso de Ciência de Dados Aplicadas de Direito do Brasil, advogado especializado em Direito e Tecnologia, pioneiro no Brasil em projetos nessa área de aplicação de ciência de dados, né, no Direito, é mestre em Direito pela PUC, sócio da Legal Score, cofundador da Vila Visual Law Studio e da Future Law, consultor de diversas startups e autor e coordenador da revista de Direito e Novas Tecnologias da Revista dos Tribunais. Tem uma série de publicações, de livros, artigos, coautor de livros de educação jurídica e de obras ganhadoras do Prêmio Jabuti em 2013, membro do Conselho Editorial também do IDP da Saraiva. E o nosso outro convidado de hoje é Joshua Walker, também uma sumidade no mundo da inteligência artificial. É autor do livro que a gente vai abordar aqui hoje, On Legal AI. O primeiro livro, talvez, que tenha tratado aí de forma sistemática e prática sobre esse tópico. Mais de 20 anos de experiência nas áreas relacionadas, 15 anos de experiência como advogado na área de propriedade intelectual. Está procurando implantar a próxima geração de soluções jurídicas e avançadas. Joshua, ele é cofundador do Codex, bem como da Lex Machina. Essa última foi um spin-off da Stanford Law School. Ele atuou como CEO e arquiteto jurídico, chefe, e atualmente lidera as transações global de propriedade intelectual da Aon. Então, além deles, né, juntamente comigo, está aqui meu sócio, Urbano Vitalino, que também vai falar um pouco sobre o uso da inteligência artificial no nosso escritório e a nossa motivação de investir em tecnologia e inovação como algo que está no nosso DNA. Então, essas eram as palavras que eu queria fazer, né? Passo para o Urbano para que ele possa falar aí um pouquinho sobre o escritório. Em seguida, a gente escuta o professor Zavaglia e depois Joshua. Ao final, nós vamos ter uma oportunidade de fazer algumas perguntas e respostas. E aí é importante apenas orientar que quando Joshua começar a sua palestra, no campo inferior aí da tela, vocês estão vendo um globo com interpretação. Então, basta você clicar ali naquele globo e escolher a opção português, que a palestra do Joshua será em inglês, mas vai ter tradução simultânea. Tá bom? Então, se sentirem alguma dificuldade, por favor, levantem a mão ou fale aqui no chat, que a gente verifica o que está acontecendo. Urbano, a palavra está contigo. Obrigado.
Obrigado, Delmar. Boa noite a todos. Minha função hoje aqui é somente abrir o evento, agradecendo, falando rapidamente aí do escritório e do investimento da gente nessa área de tecnologia, principalmente. Dizer que é uma grande honra estar recebendo aqui, para mim, as duas grandes autoridades no tema, Zavaglia, que é um amigo pessoal, e que é reconhecido realmente como a grande autoridade hoje não apenas em inteligência artificial, mas na área de tecnologia voltada para a área jurídica aqui no Brasil. E também aí com Joshua Walker, que é reconhecido como uma das autoridades nesse mesmo tema, só que no mundo. Então, não é fácil a gente conseguir juntar uma turma desse peso, e é uma honra realmente, um privilégio poder estar participando com eles nessa conversa, nesse debate aqui franco, aberto. O escritório é um escritório tradicional, tem 83 anos de existência. Eu, na verdade, sou Urbano Neto, então, na verdade, quem começou o escritório foi meu avô, embora hoje eu seja o último, digamos, remanescente da família dentro do escritório. É um escritório que hoje conta com 750 colaboradores, metade disso, cerca de 320, 340, são advogados, propriamente. Nos encontramos aí entre os 10 maiores escritórios full service, com atuação nacional. A gente tem uma atuação em todos os estados da federação. E extremamente bem ranqueado aí em várias revistas, análise da advocacia, a Chambers and Partners, a Leaders League e até no Great Place to Work, o GPTW, que há 8 anos seguidos que a gente vem conquistando essa premiação. Embora a gente seja um escritório tradicional, a gente é reconhecido no mercado exatamente por ser um escritório inovador. Então, há muitos anos que o escritório vem focando muito, de maneira que isso se tornou um pouco do DNA nosso. A tecnologia ela faz parte do nosso dia a dia há muitos anos. O escritório ficou bastante conhecido mais recentemente, nos últimos anos, em razão de ter sido o primeiro escritório na América Latina, segundo a IBM, a investir num sistema próprio, exclusivo de inteligência artificial, no caso, o Watson, da IBM, que a gente chama aqui carinhosamente de Carol, internamente dentro do escritório, é a nossa assistente virtual aqui. Teve uma repercussão muito forte na mídia, a gente lançou em 2017, informou ao público que estávamos trabalhando já com inteligência artificial em 2017, final de 2017. Em 2018, o escritório participou de mais de 40 eventos palestrando sobre o tema, em todas as revistas especializadas do Brasil, Exame, Valor Econômico, Jornal Nacional, todos eles repercutiram esse feito, uma empresa tradicional, um escritório de advocacia, implementando inteligência artificial. E a gente foi representando, inclusive, no maior evento da IBM no mundo, em Las Vegas. Delmar, inclusive, foi quem fez a apresentação lá com mais alguns sócios nossos. O nosso caso foi apresentado como case da IBM aqui no Brasil, e um evento que rodaram mais de 70 mil pessoas nos Estados Unidos. Então, a repercussão não foi só nacional, mas também aí internacional. O segredo nosso, na verdade, em tecnologia, ele é bem anterior a isso. Há cerca de 15 anos, a gente já vinha implementando um sistema de workflow, um RPA próprio, que a gente chama aqui dentro do escritório de Nosso, foi desenvolvido aqui por a gente. Só para vocês terem uma ideia, nesse sistema rodam mais de 200 robôs, que fazem uma infinidade de tarefas que auxiliam aí a Carol, a inteligência artificial, na busca e no cadastramento de informações. Hoje, Carol ela trabalha basicamente em 4 vieses. Primeiro, no cadastramento, como eu falei, dos processos. Hoje, a gente gira quase 200 mil processos aqui dentro do escritório atualmente e cerca de 85% dos processos já são cadastrados exclusivamente por Carol. Ela trouxe inicialmente uma qualidade muito grande, evidentemente, a gente está falando aí, a gente tinha uma média de acerto no cadastramento humano de 74% a 75%, hoje ela já roda acima de 98% de acerto, e ela faz isso numa velocidade infinitamente maior, a gente está falando de 4 a 5 segundos para fazer um cadastramento, contra 10 a 12 minutos para fazer um cadastramento por humano. Então, todas essas tarefas repetitivas a gente tem implementado bastante aí a Carol. Ela faz também a busca de jurisprudência, então a gente tem trabalhado muito com ela para que ela capte hoje as jurisprudências, não só internas, a gente faz o chamado small data, então todas as decisões do escritório são analisadas por ela, e agora ela está num projeto de fazer um trabalho com o Big Data, que é exatamente trazer as decisões dos juízes, mesmo que não tenham sido aqui do escritório, para que a gente tenha cada dia mais assertividade nas informações que a gente fornece ao nosso cliente. Ela também faz a montagem das contestações repetitivas na área de volume do escritório. Isso é comum que alguns escritórios de advocacia que trabalham com volume, eles trabalham com um sistema chamado de clicador, onde o advogado responde ali algumas perguntas e a petição, então, vem basicamente pronta para ele, então, fazer o trabalho, a edição final. Hoje a gente não trabalha mais com clicador porque Carol, como ela fez o cadastro, ela sabe quais são os pedidos, ela conhece a jurisprudência, então ela monta a peça já, e isso já está em mais de 80% das peças do escritório já são trazidas, montadas por Carol, para que o advogado, então, foque no detalhe e na estratégia. Essa tem sido exatamente a utilização dela. Por fim, ela tem feito também, em razão dessa busca das jurisprudências, um trabalho de análise preditiva. A ideia é exatamente prever para os clientes as chances de resultado que eles terão em cada uma das ações. Isso tem sido um grande diferencial. Hoje nós somos o único escritório de advocacia no Brasil que trabalha com esse tipo de ferramenta, porque a gente encaminha para o cliente aonde as chances dele de ganhar aquela ação determinada, naquele juiz determinado, ou naquele tribunal, quais são o índice percentualmente de chance que ele tem. Então, a gente encaminha muitas vezes para que o cliente faça acordo, por exemplo, em determinadas ações, determinado magistrado, mas não faça em outros. Então, isso ajuda muito também na rentabilização final do cliente. Nós precisamos, o investimento nosso é tão elevado e contínuo nessa área de tecnologia, que no início do ano passado nós implantamos dentro do Porto Digital, que é um dos maiores polos de tecnologia do Brasil, o Urbano Vitalino Labs. Então, nós tiramos de dentro do escritório toda a equipe que faz esse trabalho de desenvolvimento de novas tecnologias. E, para vocês terem ideia, a gente trabalha lá com cientistas da computação, alguns técnicos focados só em inteligência artificial, trabalha com gente da área de matemática, de estatística, além de técnicos e advogados, porque quem treina a inteligência artificial para a parte jurídica são advogados. Então, essa equipe hoje está fora do escritório exatamente para que ela possa se dedicar sem misturar com o ambiente do dia a dia aqui da operação. O foco de tudo isso, evidentemente, é trazer resultado para os clientes. E isso tem sido, para nossa alegria, um motivo de regozijo grande realmente para nós, porque todos os clientes, especialmente os clientes de grande porte que trabalham com rankings nacionais, a gente tem conseguido se posicionar realmente sempre em primeiro, segundo lugar nos rankings, da maioria dos nossos clientes, cuja atuação nossa é nacional ou regional. Esse é o nosso propósito, né? Todo investimento que a gente faz foca exatamente em tentar trazer, não faria sentido se fosse de outra forma, né? Conseguir manter de forma competitiva a maior qualidade possível na prestação de serviço. Apresentei, queria mais uma vez agradecer demais aí a presença do Joshua e do Zavaglia conosco e dizer que eu estou extremamente ansioso para ouvir, para debater um pouco aí com vocês, tá bom? Muito obrigado.
Bom, mano, obrigado aí pela introdução e por falar um pouco sobre nós, né, sobre o escritório. E aí passo a palavra agora para o professor Zavaglia, que ele possa aí nos brindar também com seus conhecimentos. Alexandre, fique à vontade, quando quiser.
Eu tenho um grande prazer de estar aqui, além de estar entre amigos, mas pessoas que eu também admiro muito nessa jornada, né? Eu também vou falar algumas palavras, depois a gente volta para comentar a palestra do Jorge, que eu acho que é o grande estrela aqui, né, dessa noite. Nós temos a oportunidade de estar juntos aí em outros momentos, mas quando eu comecei a trabalhar com essas questões de inteligência artificial, também trabalho com tecnologia há mais de uma década, mas especialmente a partir de 2016, né, quando a inteligência artificial acabou, né, saindo dos buscadores, né, filme, música, começou realmente a ser utilizado por outros setores. A gente começou a trabalhar com essas questões aqui no Brasil e eu sempre fui professor, né, e era diretor de uma escola de Brasília chamada IDP, e ninguém entendia o que a gente falava, né, nem para levar os projetos e tal. E eu tive a oportunidade de criar o primeiro curso de ciência de dados aplicada ao direito no Brasil, lá no IDP, né, começou no começo de 2017, e não tinha nem como montar o curso, o que falar, né? Então comecei a olhar, falei, olha, acho que o curso vai ser cada dia com quem já está fazendo algo nesse sentido. E aí, quando eu fui estudar, achei a Carol, achei o escritório e convidei, né, o escritório para fazer parte lá da primeira turma, o Bruno Souza, que foi fazer a apresentação aí em nome do escritório, né? E comecei a acompanhar desde então todo esse trabalho. E a gente evoluiu muito, né, o Brasil, porque a gente tem um ambiente, né, além da criatividade também, um ambiente de mais de 80 milhões de processos com dados abertos, né, isso ajuda bastante o desenvolvimento de tecnologia, porque na verdade a inteligência artificial não é inteligente, né, o que ela entende é padrão, né, o que ela mais está nos ajudando é justamente organizar a informação, né. E aí eu tive a oportunidade nessa trajetória de conhecer o Joshua, que hoje, né, a gente tem alguns laboratórios no mundo, mas certamente o Codex, que é o laboratório de Direito e Tecnologia da Universidade de Stanford, é um dos mais avançados do mundo. A grande maioria das empresas, né, de tecnologia nasceram lá, então o Jorge também está lá trabalhando com isso desde os anos 2000, então ele acompanhou todo esse movimento da criação dessas empresas e ajudou a fundar foi o fundador então desse laboratório. E lá no laboratório começou a fazer a primeira estruturação de informações, né? Começando, ele vai contar aí, casos de propriedade intelectual. Então, foi a primeira sistematização de casos, e isso chamou a atenção até da própria justiça, essas informações classificadas, né? E acabou virando um spin-off da primeira empresa de analytics do mundo, que é a Lex Machina, que depois foi comprada pela LexisNexis, né? Então, assim, o Jorge é simplesmente, né, o fundador desse laboratório, né, que é pioneiro dos mais relevantes do mundo e fundador da primeira empresa de tudo isso que nós estamos falando, né, e que hoje é grande referência mundial à empresa, né, o que ele criou, e também o Joshua, e ele criou um livro que é o On Legal AI. Eu também coordeno lá na GV São Paulo, aqui na GV Law, né, um grupo de pesquisa de governança de dados e regulação de inteligência artificial, e o Jorge também faz parte, né, e junto com a GV nós estamos fazendo a edição brasileira do livro dele, né, nós estamos agora na fase final de tradução e o livro vai sair aqui no Brasil mais ou menos em novembro, né. So Joshua, I'm just telling them our audience about the book, and we are now in the finish of this translation, and soon we're going to get a book here in Brazil just around November. E aí, né, com tudo isso, né, a gente tem participado aí em vários países, e o Urbano também, a gente tem se encontrado aí, Lisboa, que é um ambiente muito importante, né, Estados Unidos, né, obviamente, Londres, que também tem um ambiente muito avançado de tecnologia, então a gente tem aprendido muito lá fora, mas o que o Urbano falou, né, e o Delmar, depende muito também de cultura, né? Porque é justamente essa liderança do escritório que faz as coisas acontecer, porque todo mundo fala tecnologia e inteligência artificial, mas são pouquíssimas pessoas que estão fazendo de verdade, com essa escala, com essa qualidade, são pouquíssimas mesmo no mundo, né? Isso aí a gente viaja bastante, nós podemos garantir, nós estamos aqui falando do que existe de mais moderno no mundo. Isso depende da cultura e depende de uma liderança, né, do investimento em pessoas e também a alocação de recursos para isso acontecer. Por quê? Tudo isso que o Urbano falou, né, das petições e tal, pode parecer que é a tecnologia que faz, mas por trás tem um trabalho humano gigantesco, né? Então, primeiro você precisa organizar as informações. Para você saber qual é a jurisprudência ideal para cada juiz, né, para sair naquele documento, você precisa estudar todos os juízes, todas as jurisprudências, né? E assim você classificar todas essas informações para poder depois criar essa árvore de decisão, para dizer, olha, nesse caso a gente vai usar esse parágrafo, naquele caso o outro parágrafo, essa jurisprudência. Então, tudo isso, né, que para quem está olhando de fora e sai aquela petição ali em segundos, né, não imagina que são anos de trabalho e anos de dedicação e um time intenso por trás de curadoria dessa informação, né? Por isso que tem um conceito muito importante de gestão de conhecimento, né? Então, é uma gestão de conhecimento e é isso que gera essa qualidade. Então, porque no final das contas, né, assim como o Word é uma tecnologia, quem escreve o conteúdo do Word somos nós. Todas essas tecnologias mais avançadas acontecem da mesma maneira. Então, o conteúdo de tudo isso é o direito. Então, não adianta também você ter a tecnologia avançada se você não tem, né, uma qualidade muito importante, uma profundidade no próprio direito. Então, o que a gente está vendo aqui, né, e as pesquisas mundiais mostram que, na verdade, a tecnologia está nascendo dos escritórios, está nascendo, né, do judiciário, porque são as pessoas que entendem do problema, as pessoas que sabem o que fazer, que dado precisa, como é que ela vai resolver. Então, aqui nós estamos vendo um caso realmente, né, de muito sucesso no mundo, que é essa ligação entre, né, o conteúdo avançado do direito com técnicas aí de automação, de inteligência artificial que tem feito esse trabalho. E eu estou ajudando a montar agora um projeto novo chamado Legal Code, que é justamente como é que a gente vai ajudar, né, as empresas, os escritórios, e eu tenho aprendido muito, e a gente tem feito uma transferência de tecnologia aí muito grande nesse tempo de amizade, de trabalho conjunto, né, para montar isso que seria nessa esteira, né, desde a leitura, né, a busca de subsídios, depois a triagem, se aquilo vai para acordo, se vai para contestação, e qual o conteúdo dessa contestação. Então, apesar de a gente estar desenvolvendo, né, e nós vamos lançar em breve essa tecnologia no mercado, isso sempre vai depender das pessoas, sempre vai depender do conteúdo, né? Então, é um trabalho que a gente sempre, desde o começo, falou. Nada disso funciona sem os seres humanos. É esse um pouco do que a gente queria deixar aqui. E o mais importante, nada também vale a pena você investir ou fazer se não tiver resultado, né? Então, nós estamos falando aqui de qualidade, de acuracidade, né, de melhores resultados, porque quando você faz uma política de acordo na média, né, você pode estar errando em todas as cidades, você está trabalhando uma média. Agora, se você souber exatamente qual é o valor por comarca, né, qual é o valor de provisão e como colocar tudo isso dentro dessa estratégia, é o que efetivamente permite, né, a gente ter um resultado financeiro, né, para as empresas, para os escritórios, né, de um modo geral. Então, essa ligação entre cultura, né, conteúdo jurídico, tecnologia e resultado, porque se vocês forem estudar o conceito de inovação, é algo que tem que dar resultado. Se não der resultado, não é inovação. Então, não adianta ter uma ideia. Tem que ter uma ideia que você implemente e que dá resultado. Senão, ela não é inovação, né? Então, é um pouco do que a gente tem o maior prazer de estar aqui, porque a gente tem uma admiração por quem faz. E aqui vocês podem ter certeza de tudo que a gente já viajou, fez, participou de palestra, conheceu todas as startups aqui no Brasil. Nós estamos realmente falando, e não é porque nós estamos aqui na frente, porque é verdade, nós estamos aqui com o que existe de ponta no mundo. Então, com essas palavras iniciais, é que a gente queria passar a palavra aí para o Joshua. E Joshua, is just a quick presentation about you and telling everyone about the Urbano Vitalino law firm, that they really are one of the pioneers here in Brazil. So as we told you, they have 200,000 lawsuits in their office. So using AI with 98% of accuracy and mating 80% of petitions. So, and you know more than everyone that there's a lot of people doing that. It's not just a machine. So it's a cultural stuffs and all the things that you're gonna show us about your knowledge and make us learn with you. So thank you again. And I told everyone about the book, and we are very anxious to have the book here in Brazil, the Brazilian edition with FGV.
Well, likewise, Alex, it's an honor to be here, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to come to Brazil initially in last year, and the chance. Thank you, Urbano Vitalino, for helping to make this book a reality. Our goal is, our focus is on Brazil, and if we can help, if Brazil's innovation and your innovation is way ahead of the vast majority of many, but if we can help Brazil avoid the mistakes of other places and history, that's great. So again, boa noite. Thank you again for joining tonight, and it's an honor to be here. I had three different things I wanted to talk about based on the partners and requests. One is like getting from data to decisions, and it's something that I think everyone has been talking about tonight so far. But we'll go into that a little bit more detail. The second is use cases, right? So you've heard about one and kind of lawsuit outcome prediction, predictive modeling, but we'll talk about that a little bit more, and some of the challenges that we've seen both in Brazil and around the world. And then multidisciplinary teams, right? How do we do that, and how do we actually get things done within these specialized units? So to sort of, I think to kind of start us off, the thing that we are, the thing that we're really focused on doing is, how do we actually, when you're going from data to decisions, what's required? There is a massive, massive amount of entropy and uncertainty and doubt between raw data, which is like raw ore, and the finished product, which is like an automobile. And so the team at Urbano Vitalino has probably told you, 2% of what they've done, but there's a massive amount of activity. And if you think about AI and what it really is, one of my colleagues, we just came out with a new book this summer called Outsmarting AI. He says, for every AI, math is the father of AI and data is the mother. So if you have the wrong data, none of this stuff will work, and you have to apply the mathematics in a way that's intelligent and reflects the empirical reality, which is why lawyers are part of this discussion, in my view, at every stage. In dealing with entropy, the philosophy that I like to use, which is a daily tool for me, is, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. So you don't know, there's an almost unlimited number of ways that things can go wrong in these processes. And so you have to predictably model like all the errors that could happen, all the anomalies that could happen. And just like with ore, there is impurities in the data, you got to clean them, you got to test them and cross-check them. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that, which I'll talk about in a second. Another way of saying that in a non-religious way is the set of things we don't know will always vastly exceed the set of things we do know. And if you're an in-house counsel and a lawyer, and I've been privileged and as it happens, I've done most of law, in the academic world, supporting the judiciary, prosecution, a lot of law firm work, and then been a general counsel. But if you're a general counsel, the uncertainty is vast, and you have to navigate the political dimension of your department. You have to navigate budgeting, politics. You have a lot of things. You've got to translate legal qualitative risk into quantitative outcomes and things like that. So and translate it so the CEO and the CFO can make investments appropriately. Very difficult to do. And but the more we're able to speak and translate what we're doing on the legal side into quantitative data, the better, right? It really helps, at least for enterprise transactions and for people making decisions as citizens. It's very, very helpful when you can translate a little bit or work with others that can help them do that. So when we started in about 2002 seriously at Stanford, and then predictive modeling for motions and different outcomes in the cases in about 2008. And it was shocking how much you could learn, even from very, very crude models about, okay, have this lawyer and this type of patent case in front of this judge, you can do much more prediction than you should be able to do that without even looking at the merits of the case. Once you get into the facts, there's rich ore that you can mine. And what is different about, say, your 200,000 case set is that the amount of data that's really in there is almost unlimited, right? There's almost an unlimited amount of information in there, not purely about the lawsuits, but about compliance, right? So if there are certain fact sets that you know are going to lead to these types of lawsuits, if you have exogenous data, outside data, and please stop me if I should slow down for translation. I'm a nerd, so we speak quickly here. But if you have exogenous data, there's enormous amounts of value you can unlock for compliance or to determine the system is out of whack. And I'll give you an example in that. In about 2004, 2005, and it's in the book. I won't bore you with it, but it's relevant to your current data set. No one knew for sure how many patent lawsuits there were in the US, much less how many, what the outcomes were. There was no data at all on trade secret lawsuits. And these were billions and billions of dollars of liability, over $1 trillion net. And nobody knew. And so if you were the general counsel at a tech company, sorry, go ahead.
If you may, because your connection is it's cutting a little. If you may, speak a little bit slower, so it will be easier for the translation. Sorry about that.
Obrigado. Thank you very much. I'll be a little slower. So there was chaos in this data set. People didn't know what to do. And if you were the general counsel of Apple or Intel, all the departments were saying, well, here's my data, and here's the marketing data, and here's the sales information, and here's the technology and how fast it's moving. They brought in lots of data. And the poor lawyer, she's sitting there and saying, well, I think this case will go this way. And I don't know quite how many lawsuits there are, but it's this. It turns out there were massive problems in the system of patents. We were, the United States was pretty good at, determining semiconductor patents and other types of IP issues. But for software, it was a mess. The judges were invalidating these things 95% of the time. It was a big change by the judge, where the judge said, this should never have been, this is wrong by the executive branch to do this. So the data illuminates problems in the system, and the data are really valuable to say, hey, this area is very litigious. You may want to do this. So it became one of my biggest clients, who then hired me as a lawyer. They were M&A firm. They're Simpson Batcher, and a wonderful firm. Love those people. Really, really great old school lawyers, right? And I'm like, they're using this tool all the time. I was a head of a software company at the time. Why is that? They don't do that much patenting. It turns out, in the M&A process, they had really led the field in using it for mergers and acquisitions. Every loss, like if you're taking a piece of a company out of a larger company, right? Say a big ag business, you're taking the tractor business away, you're taking the seed business out. You need to know which patents are you going to take. You also need to know how much you're going to get sued once you take that out and have it as a standalone business. Or if you buy a small startup, maybe they've never been sued before, but it's not necessarily because they've got safe IP. It may be because they're too small. So if Microsoft buys them or another company buys them, they'll have many more lawsuits. So that graph of those 200 cases, there's an almost infinite amount of stuff in there, but there's a lot of uncertainty about how you apply it to. And so what I found is that humility was one of the greatest assets you can have, of mining that and using it and helping real people with, improve the results. If you're representing a group of citizens, right? How do you help that group? Maybe it's a nonprofit. If you're helping a bank, how do you help a bank navigate and reduce their lawsuit occurrence or improve their outcomes? systemically inside the firm. So we did a deal when I was a GC. I said, a very good firm, I said, if we have an HR problem helping us, this amount, right? And we have this flat fee every month. And so they had a great incentive to proactively avoid problems, right? As they say it's a very famous Chinese expression that says, the famous doctor, cures the disease, right? The less famous one manages it, but the greatest doctor avoids the disease entirely. So this type of data can actually be extremely useful for corporate planning and compliance purposes, or again, looking at things on a mass scale, looking for systemic problems, as well as helping individuals in cases. So, but the use case for that. So in the US, we found this data. No one trusted our data initially. And eventually I had to prove that I didn't care what the system was like. I was neutral. I was just an empirical person. And eventually people started trusting the data because we shared it with everybody. We did not have a partisan view of this or that. And because, as many other countries, America can be very partisan, not just politically, but in terms of how the law is going to be stacked. Having a one center of truth for the country was incredibly important, even just for patent, right? And now that system, it's scaled up. The same algorithms are used for everything, COVID cases, whatever it is. So that's one type of use case. Second type of use case that should be obvious is contracts. I always hired litigators to draft my contracts for me because they knew how to draft so that there was a problem. First of all, they could avoid problems, but if there was a problem, we could get summary judgment, a quick outcome. And I don't know what the procedural equivalent is in Brazil or any state of Brazil, but it's you use the litigation data to be better corporate lawyers, right? And that's a growth area for not just the people on this call, but their clients and the internal business clients as well. That's intelligence that you can use to do better. And the thing I refer to a lot is the Santayana or Churchill quote that says, "Those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it." Even if you don't believe in data, and that's a smaller group of people than it was, then you're an old school lawyer, like you need to know your history. And if this one judge, she only grants this type of motion for this type of situation, don't spend $500,000 reals or $500,000 on all these other types of things unless you really don't care, right? You're insensitive to it. Try to focus on what works and then have a catch-all for other possibilities. So, by the way, am I speaking too quickly again, or that's translation's okay?
No, I believe now it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Always feel free to stop me. Contracts is the other one that's enormous. The last data I had is that people are able to review, again, lawyers or professionals are able to review contracts 8 times faster. So it's important for M&A, it's important for compliance, LGDP, but you can't not use that at this point. Now, what causes these things to fail? What are the challenges? I'll focus on contracts first because you guys are so advanced in terms of predictive modeling and litigation. There are, I think, 3 basic things that prevent, say, contract analytics from working. I think one is arrogance, right? That there's always a danger of arrogance. Either the lawyers feel like they don't need technology, and I know you guys are very advanced, so I don't have to, it's not the case here. Or where we see a lot of in Silicon Valley is the engineers think it's just data. You don't really need this specialist in the domain. They'll just engineer it. It's the same as everything else. That's failed for Google. It's failed for a lot of like very, very, very successful entrepreneurs have failed because they don't meld engineering knowledge and AI with the legal knowledge. And if you don't have the domain expertise, it tends not to work. There's a paper we came out with at the Stanford AI Lab in about 2008 that says when machine learning stumbles. And we compared the special language we created to do event detection against the best machine learning, just basic, uncustomized algorithms, and our system beat them, right? They proved that. And the reason is, if you know the terrain and what certain events mean, your predictive algorithms are going to be much, much better. And you can avoid crude things. But the advantage of the AI, of course, is it's fast and it's cheap. So humans are vastly smarter, and experts are vastly smarter in the domain. You leverage the AI because it is fast and cheap. And so if you do that, the economic benefit you can bring is much, much greater. The other challenge, though, that we have in the US, just as has been there, is in lack of investment. You can't, as in Brazil, historically, have not allowed public investment in law firms. That's changing potentially now in Utah and in California. I was on a task force that is now going to enable experimenting potentially to allow investment by non-lawyers into law firms. So you can do things like R&D and do a lot of this. I'm very interested to hear, my question for you guys is how you did that, you know, a few years ago, invested in AI. How did you make that happen? In the States, we use the university. The university is very helpful because the companies, the clients collectively raise money to produce, you know, to do public interest projects. And then we spun them off to make sure they were sustainable so we could get the best talent, you know, around. So those are two big challenges, right? Is I think arrogance from either engineering or legal, again, not the case here. And then lack of investment. How do you maximize that? And I think you can solve it with contracts and other mechanisms, but it's a systemic problem, right? That the big four accounting firms, the consulting firms, they are moving very, very, very quickly, and they will shrink the entire legal market in a way that again, may be helpful or not, but is not good for law firms. I'd argue that lawyers should be leading the legal AI revolution, or at least the legal AI improvement, right, for client outcomes, because we care about the law, we're trained to do it, and we are going to do a better job when it's a legal characterization. So, but we do love, you know, multidisciplinary teams. The other huge challenge, at least for contract, is there is no Brazilian legal language model. So there is no contract clause library that's there and ready to go. So it's a massive pain for any one law firm to do that. I don't think it's a problem that can be solved alone, and that's something I'd love to keep helping with, to map the existing legal AI to, you know, contract problems here. But that's a huge problem and an impediment. It's not going to go away. And then, so those are some of the challenges. I was also asked to talk a little bit for a minute on multidisciplinary teams, and the best example I give is the one I'm doing now. So my colleague at Aon's a giant insurance firm. I think they're number one or two for enterprise insurance brokerage, but they do a lot of other things, right? And so we have a thing called Aon Quality of Intellectual Property, and it's basically me, the former investment banker for tech, and the former head of IP for Microsoft, and we are essentially saying you have all these assets, these intangible assets. They might be trade secrets, maybe data assets. Nobody knows what to do with them. Like if the company's being sold, it's like you have these things and then nothing happens. Like there's very intense discussion between the IP lawyer specialists and then nothing happens. It's the strangest thing. What we're doing is we've written a report that's analogous to quality of earnings reports that maps the intellectual property to the business. So this IP covers this. We have unique data sets for this type of margin, this type of revenue, and this product. We have these patents here. We've got these trademarks and other things that are protecting our ability to innovate. And in that case, going to Alex's, Professor Zavaglia's point, you know, we are looking for a hard delta on M&A transactions. We want them to get, we screen the clients first. So we don't take every client, but for clients with distinct intellectual property or data, we're looking for a 10% increase on what they would have gotten otherwise, or at least $10 million in deal value. Like we want to show clear additional deal value. Very hard to prove that, right? But that is the kind of thing we're hunting. It's like all of this, and there's a ton of AI behind it that I'm not even going to talk about. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are we helping the client by 10%? And I would say for everything we're talking about in Brazil, in FGV, and I'm so grateful to be even a small part of this, thanks to Alex and others who were great pioneers and leading in globally in general. What's the outcome going to be for our clients? What is the outcome going to be for citizens? Can we help regular citizens as well as help grow the economy? What is the empirical improvement going to be on illuminating these different fields? And LGTB is a great one. We cannot survive this very, very rapid implementation of LGTB as regular business doing regular business, I think, without technology. I mean, and to me, that everything that has happened that I've heard of secondhand is a complete outsider who is not part of any party in Brazil, have no affiliations with anyone. That is a huge opportunity to lead because you're going to be able to predict, we're going to see this type of lawsuit spike because it's a little bit analogous to this, right? Or you're going to see it as it starts to happen. And so how do you help people comply with it and avoid a lawsuit wave before it even occurs? How can you be the best possible doctor, right? And how can we do AI governance and create AI to avoid problems before they occur, right, already, and show very, very rapid diligence? This technology is the only way to do it. So just some initial thoughts. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm so honored to be here.
All right, Joshua. Thank you so much for all the info and for all the provocation. I believe you asked a question which is very interesting about investments in technology for law firms. We have the same problem that you mentioned in the U.S. We cannot have non-lawyer investment partners in law firms. So a quick answer is we did it with our money. We invested privately instead of paying earnings to the partners. We decided to invest in technology, and that is something that Urbano led almost 10 years ago, and convinced all of us that it was highly important for the firm to invest in technology, and that's what we keep doing. We keep using our money to invest in technology.
And Joshua, they did exactly what the big consultancy are doing now. That's why it's a very special project, because they are ahead of the time worldwide, because they put money and a lot of efforts and people to do that. So now they are very close to this new model. They have a lot of multidisciplinary teams inside these law firms, not as a partner, but with a lot of people helping them to do that. They have their own technology, so they are really ahead of the time.
But it would be good to have other sources of funding.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you've done software licensing yet, but again, I don't want to go, let me know what topics are appropriate for this group, but I just applaud you for doing that. 3 questions. One, how did Urbano convince the partner? How did that happen? Like, what were the arguments? 10 years ago, it was not so easy to make that case. What enabled to do that? How much support are you getting from clients? And is there more you could do with your clients? What problems do you see in general, like at a high level, or what's preventing you from getting to the next level? And have you thought about software licensing and kind of the revenue models that are that? Again, if that's not appropriate, you don't have to talk about it. But what I find is if you can, go ahead.
We discussed that. Urbano, do you want me to answer or do you want to answer?
No, I just want to say that we are a group of friends, and more than partners, we are friends. So we are very clear when we talk about these matters. So it's always easier to do things happens.
Obviously, it was a convincing process, but like he said, we always think what's best for the firm, and it was a convincing process, but it was a successful project, and now we have the results. So about software licensing, we did and we do think about sometimes. We didn't put that in practice. And what prevents us from the next step? I would say more funding. I would say that we invest everything that we can, but if we have alternative ways of funding, it would make us move faster.
Right, and you can probably do that. Either create a subsidiary. With the rules in the U.S. do not prevent a law firm from owning a tech company. They only prevent a non-lawyer owning a share of the revenue from legal services. And so you do have a few hybrid models. Immigration law, for instance, is one of those where they've actually done this already, and they have very successful companies that have law firm and then a company that act in parallel. Mm-hmm. And there's some complicated accounting, but the beauty of Google, right? And it's obvious, but it's worth restating, is that I actually asked Sequoia, the Doug Leone, the head of Sequoia, what's your favorite company? And he goes, duh, it's Google, because of the margins, right? And it's one fixed cost investment, but scalability to massive numbers of people. There is a danger that either the law firm or the tech company can take too much, and that will distort the incentive structures. But that's one way of doing it. The other, which I really like, is partnering with clients where there is a big problem and they need you to solve something, and they have capital, right? And it's not so easy for them to get it either. But on the other hand, they have a lot of pain from one lawsuit. That is, and they say, look, we can help solve this problem or reduce it by 5 to 10%. Very often, that's a case they can make to their CFO, that it's worth attacking this as a public service, as charity, in a nonprofit, or directly, right, in a special purpose entity. So, and again, just brainstorming. I didn't mean to go too deep into detail, but you guys are so advanced, it's worth getting into the hard stuff.
Brazil is a little more strict. The business model, a law firm cannot own another company, but we are creative. There are ways. I mean, we as persons can establish other firms with other purposes, and then we can invest in technology. The firm cannot own, but the partners can own.
Yes.
Let me just ask to see if anybody has questions. Pessoal, quem tiver perguntas pode ficar à vontade para colocar aí no Q&A aí embaixo, tá certo? A gente já pode começar a interação. Enquanto isso, vamos explorando aqui algumas outras opiniões do Joshua. Joshua, if I may ask your opinion about ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, and ODR. I don't know if you can enlighten us a little bit of the use of artificial intelligence, what you think about, and if the machine learning, if we could use artificial intelligence in ODR, and if there is any risk of bias to the decisions. I don't know if it's a topic that you would like to discuss a little.
It's a great question, and I think it's actually close to what we've been talking about. The theory for us in patent litigation. Again, these are pretty big cases. I know it's very different in Brazil, but in the U.S. it was a huge problem. But very often getting above $1 billion in damages, and very strange. If you go to one district, you get this 10 times the outcome you get in another district. So. And we have juries, which can also, if it's not managed properly, it can lead to very strange outcomes. The theory was, if you knew all of the outcomes and you could predict what was going to happen, that would help lead to more resolution of disputes. There are two problems with that. First, you have to get the data finished, right? So you have to get it exactly where it should be. That's number one. Number two, you have to be impartial. So and again, I was friends with this guy named Colin Rule, who was trying to do this at eBay and others in about 2004. And it's very difficult, I think, for them. I think it's easier if it's a closed network and they've signed up by contract. So I think it is very doable. The state of the art for us in patent was you get two lawyers and they have charts and they fight each other with different opinions and they don't agree. Now people will come in with data, so it's a little better than that. And they'll say, well, look, you've won 0 of these, or you've never gone past Markman order. And then the courts will use it to challenge the lawyers. Like, what are you talking about? You're not going to win. You've never won this kind of wacky argument ever. The judges are looking at the lawyers. So the mirror goes both ways. So the data produces a situation that's like that. If you want to create a closed system that's done by contract, where you have to use that system, but you can map it to empirical results in the real space, I think that's maybe a pragmatic way to simulate, a fully automated online dispute resolution system. And what you're setting is you're saying we're going to set statistical boundaries and still have a human in the loop. I would still keep a human in the loop. Okay. If you don't, you're going to have weird anomalies. So the problem is objectivity. What is the contractual requirement to lock people into this online dispute resolution? And is it a company? Like, is it Mercado Libre? Is it a banking situation? Is it a healthcare? And you give something back to the parties, because the cost of litigating and hiring lawyers is, going to be pretty significant. So I think it's a great question. It's about, it would probably take us a couple of days to explore the basic elements of it, but that's my initial gut reaction to start off.
But Joshua, I participated today, this morning, in a very nice event with Thomson Reuters, and they they showed us 2 cases about the China court, and then from Canada. So they are working in this ODR strategies aimed at the information asymmetry. And then they are increasing a lot the agreements, because everyone knows, well, you want 50, you want to pay 10. So at the most time, it's 20. So you are wrong. You have to do the right thing. And it's in this range, So this is a very nice project that I saw today.
Yeah, so you can start that very practically now, even if it's not a completely automated, judge bot. And even if the settlement data is unknown, knowing what the damages are should help inform like a baseline truths about, here's the spectrum of reality of what's going to happen. The amount of ignorance about litigation is vast, at least in the US. And so, and everywhere else. So by reducing that spectrum and saying, here is the reality, and showing it to the client, creating interfaces that the clients are going to see, I think you're reducing the amount of silliness that goes on. So very, very interesting space.
Okay, I received a few questions, basically with the same theme, which is how do you think artificial intelligence will impact and change the way lawyers work, the traditional way lawyers work, and if that will impact the job scenario as a whole?
Just one more time, Delmar.
How do you think artificial intelligence will impact the work of lawyers, if you consider a traditional way of working, and if artificial intelligence will create more opportunities or reduce opportunities for lawyers?
Yes. Yes. So in other words, it'll do both. Just keep in mind the ATM example of when the cash machines came out for banks. They said their tellers are going to disappear, and in the U.S. they doubled or tripled in the 10 years that follow. So I think the answer will be complex. I think people that don't take advantage of some of the ability to use data, like I would not want to be a patent litigator in the US and not have access to data of some kind. It's a massive disadvantage, especially for if I'm in Recife and I'm going to Brasilia or I'm going to Minas Gerais, like, pardon the pronunciation, I need to have data about that district because I'm new at it. But if I use the data, it's an ability, it helps me sell and it helps me help the client, helps me win. So I think using data is going to be absolutely essential. But lawyers get hired for a variety of reasons, and one of them is trust, and you become a strategic counselor. So as you get more senior. In the US, the lower end jobs are getting harder to support. But once you're a third year lawyer, like that's a much more profitable thing. So you can leverage first, second, and third year associates to help build data products and help clients, right? Deploy them at client sites at lower rates. And then that knowledge will make them experts by having to deal with the data. It gets embedded in them and they learn how to use the tools. So I think it will make lawyers more valuable, but it requires us to adapt. If you think of it like leading an orchestra, I think lawyers will become much more like, you've got an orchestra, you're conducting, and you have different tools that pull things up. But I do think it requires us to be humble and learn and to be competitive too.
Okay, thank you so much. We have two questions about LGPD. One says, in Brazil, the LGPD is coming into force. What experience could you share in relation to this topic, considering the use of data by artificial intelligence?
That's right. So it's in the book, certainly. But when we were, I was the general counsel at a company called Airbus. We had actually a number of projects in Brazil for helicopter on-demand services, things like that. But as well as a fairly significant presence. But our job was, we worked with a ton of data. We had AI projects, contracts projects, and then actual aerospace engineering. And we had a data control plan. And that was the beginning. It was, you have a lawyer, there's three answers, right? And it's something that a lot of in-house counsel are doing already. You have a data control plan. My outside counsel reviewed it and just added more to that. So if you think of lawyers as word surgeons, a more efficient use of much greater value for that is not just doing the surgery. It's looking at, say, I've seen a lot of cancer and I know what can reduce the amount of cancer if you do these 50 things. And so you can do that, you can resell that to many, many different clients, right? Not the specifics, but your know-how about how to avoid these types of liabilities and what's happening. And you can give them real-time intelligence about what's changing in that market. As the litigation starts to spike, you need to be like the public health officials, right? Not political, but like, here is what's happening, here's the data, here's your dashboard. It doesn't have to be automated. You can create a PowerPoint slide and say, I've noticed the spike, I'm just keeping you apprised. They're gonna impress their bosses so much when they say, we had a spike yesterday of these types of things, I'm gonna adjust my strategy a little bit. So that's one. Having a data control plan it's a document, right? It's a lawyer thing, it's simple, but there's an outside counsel role and the litigators have a unique value in that, and data does as well. Second, we had some engineering about how we control data sets, and the contract system was connected to, it wasn't an AI-based system, but it was a piece of software that improved our contract outputs. Number three, we had gets more advanced, you had autonomous air vehicles, right? So these are self-driving, and these things are flying right now. They're usually piloted by humans, but the next 5 to 10 years, in Sao Paulo, in Rio, in Recife, you will probably see vehicles that the technology is here now, the problem law. we were building, this is public information, is legal engineering systems for air traffic control and compliance and safety. And that in and of itself was, so I had lawyers on the project teams for these types of activities. They were at the design stage. They weren't at, oh, we have a product and it's flying. No. We were designing this solution for clients. The lawyer was hidden amongst the engineers to do this. And the ultimate one was we're going to build legal automation into the system so it can do privacy compliance. If these things are flying near a neighborhood and have a high-def camera, we shield, you collect certain types of data.
Eu acho que o Joshua caiu, mas ele já vai voltar. Enquanto isso, aproveitar falando em português aqui, Delmar, só para complementar o que ele estava falando aí, uma questão importante é o seguinte: tudo que a gente usa aqui para analytics, né, a gente usa no plano macro, vamos dizer. Nós precisamos saber qual é o valor do acordo por cidade, qual é o valor da condenação por cidade, qual é aquela tese, qual é a jurisprudência dominante. Então, quando a gente também não individualiza, a gente pode usar esses dados aí de uma maneira bastante ampla e continuar fazendo tudo que nós estamos fazendo. Outro ponto relevante que o Jorge estava falando é que o nosso artigo 20 da LGPD agora nos obriga a explicar a decisão automatizada. E aí que tem um trabalho muito grande daqui para frente, porque a decisão da inteligência artificial muitas vezes não é compreendida, né? Tem o chamado black box, etc. E às vezes o dado que gerou aquela decisão é desbalanceado, às vezes pode ter um viés de gênero, né? De etnia. Então a gente vai ter, a partir de agora, um desafio muito grande. Isso tem a ver com direito, tecnologia, também é um trabalho multidisciplinar, de como trabalhar a construção de algoritmos que não tenham esses viés e como é que a gente vai ajudar as empresas a criar essa explicação das decisões. So, Joshua, you just have a connection problem, so I was just complementing your answer, telling them about our Article 20 and the right of the explanation of the automated decision and our challenge to about the black box and bias and all that stuff.
I think it's great. It's a huge issue. I'll wrap my other comment up, and Alex is a great resource for all of us in Brazil and in general. We need to break into something called what I call legal engineering. Again, it's in the book on legal AI that Alex and others are going to help contribute to as well. In its next versions. Legal engineering is you're building a subsystem of the machine that's doing legal compliance. Type of thing that we have to build right now because of the speed that this is happening at. You don't have to do this alone as a law firm. You could do it in partnership with, again, it could be the eBays of Brazil or the fintechs of Brazil, but this is something where you can be a legal engineer for their internal compliance solution. If we don't do that, non-lawyers will do a bunch of things and they may be very helpful, but they won't be as intelligent about the law and complying with the law efficiently as you can do to help it. So I encourage you to help design these systems, especially if you have a ton of litigation data, which should inform the engineering of these things. So it seems a little far out, but these are software solutions you can do right now. You stick a lawyer in the room with the software designers to help them create compliance systems. And that's something that you're uniquely positioned to do. Going back to Alex's point, I'll say one little thing we did to help. Our attitude for Lex Machina was assume all data are false until proven otherwise. And we assume nothing. So whenever we had the AI decision made, like this is this type of event, and this is this type of event, you could click into see the actual signed document by the judge. So you need to be able to show the causal information. That again is a kind of legal transparency is another kind of legal compliance system. So that's a system design and build problem that we're going to get to work on. And it's a huge growth market, right? For better or worse, the engineers desperately need you to build their own systems, not just for litigation, but also for developing any product to be compliant with LGPD. So great topic, and I know we've just scratched the surface, and wanted to support what Alex was saying.
Yeah, that's true. So we already with a little bit more than 1 hour. We still have a few questions, but I will ask the participants so we can address them by email later on. I don't want to keep everybody for much longer. And to Zavaglia and to Walker, we could spend the whole night discussing topics involving AI, which are very exciting. And I'm pretty sure you guys would have a lot of experience to share with us. So I will just go back to Portuguese a little, Joshua, and thank you everyone for participating. Pessoal, a gente já vai aqui com um pouco mais de 1 hora e 15, e eu sei que tem algumas outras perguntas que não foram respondidas, mas eu me comprometo a, se vocês quiserem mandar as perguntas por e-mail, a gente fazer isso, endereçar essas outras perguntas que vocês tiverem. São temas muito interessantes e instigantes, e conseguiríamos ficar aqui aproveitando a companhia de Zavaglia e de Walker por muito mais tempo, né, ouvindo a experiência deles e a visão deles da inteligência artificial nos escritórios de advocacia e no direito como um todo. Então, eu queria agradecer a participação de todos. Vou passar a palavra rapidamente para Urbano, para Zavaglia e para Joshua, que se eles quiserem fazer aí uns agradecimentos finais, mas era só para explicar aí que as últimas perguntas a gente responde posteriormente, se vocês assim desejarem. Alexandre, se você quiser...
Eu só queria agradecer mais uma vez a oportunidade. Para mim tem sido um privilégio também participar de vários webinars e aprender com o Joshua, estudando aí também tudo que ele tem contribuído, né? E ajudando aí nessa edição brasileira do livro, na tradução. Então é um privilégio muito grande a gente poder estar junto aí nesse projeto. E agradecer também a você, Delmar, e o Urbano, pela amizade, parceria, por a gente poder trocar experiências e desenvolver aí atividades, projetos em conjunto que realmente, como eu disse, nós estamos aqui com o que existe de mais moderno no mundo, né? E eu vejo aqui o pessoal também falando, né? Bastante gente perguntando essa questão ética de algoritmo e como é que a gente vai trabalhar isso, né? São várias questões nesse sentido. É o que a gente está estudando lá na GV. O grupo já tem 6 meses e ainda nós não chegamos nem perto de mapear quais são, né, os assuntos que a gente precisa estudar, é isso que a gente está fazendo esse ano, e é um desafio muito grande, né? Depois a gente pode marcar um outro papo aqui só sobre isso aí, porque tem assunto para bastante tempo. Então, um prazer, and thank you, Joshua, again. As I said, it's a privilege to be with you here in this webinars, and thanks again, Urbano Vitalino, to support us in the project of the book and in our research group at FGV. So thank you very much again.
Joshua, if you want just a last few words, basically just thanking and saying goodbye.
Thank you, Urbano Vitalino, for supporting this. And I hope it's the beginning of the end. Please find me on LinkedIn. There were some great questions asked about ethics, topic, and war crimes and criminal prosecution. Very, very important. Please look me up, and I look forward to working with you and meeting many of you in person. God willing, to go down soon. So thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Walker. Urbano, algumas palavras aí de...
Eu encerro agradecendo realmente aí ao professor Zavaglia, ao Joshua, pelo grande privilégio que ele nos deram em participar aqui conosco. Sempre que eu converso aí, tenho tido a oportunidade de conversar com o Zavaglia, no Brasil e fora do Brasil, né, Zavaglia? A mente da gente sai fervilhando, cheio de ideias, né? E isso é o que faz realmente o escritório focar em inovação o tempo todo. E isso é muito bom, porque a gente precisa estar enchendo aí a nossa mente com o que há de mais moderno, não é, com o que está se discutindo ainda aí fora, para tentar antecipar um pouco isso aqui no Brasil, na nossa área de atuação. De maneira que tem sido muito bom para mim. A semana passada mesmo tivemos juntos em São Paulo, no nosso escritório lá, né, e foi muito, muito bom sempre. Verdade. Obrigado aí mais uma vez, gente. Obrigado a você também, viu, Delmar, pela participação e condução aí do nosso webinar.
É isso. Obrigado, gente. O livro, como o Zavaglia disse, deve estar com a versão traduzida, né, para o português em novembro.
Vai ser lançado pela RT, e aí vai estar nas bancas, né, vender também online, então vai estar disponível aí para o mercado todo.
E para quem quiser a versão inglesa, On Legal AI já está disponível, né, nos sites americanos, enfim, pode ser adquirido também. É isso, pessoal. Boa noite, obrigado por terem participado. E, mais uma vez, estamos à disposição, se quiserem mandar e-mails para respondermos as perguntas. Tá bom? Obrigado a todos. Uma boa noite.
Obrigado. Boa noite a todos.
Boa noite.